our history, our family history can come from Mexico, but our personal history is from both. And it's kind of like a duality, that as Mexican Americans, we have to grapple with. Like, we're from both countries, but at the same time, we're not.
Hi everyone, my name is Kevin. Jenny and I are both Mexican Americans from Chicago. Both of our families migrated to the United States from Mexico before we were born. And about 4 years ago, we decided to move to Mexico in search of a new home and to reconnect with our roots. We're doing something a little different from my usual travel vlogs today. We are more than a travel vlog channel. We'd like to use our platform to embrace our Mexican American identity. So today we're going to talk about just that with other amazing Mexican Americans that we've met throughout our travels in Mexico. So if you're new to our channel, please subscribe and become part of this journey of self-discovery and appreciation for Mexico.
All right, thank you all for joining us on this important conversation today. This is something we talk a lot about offline amongst ourselves, the people you see on the screen, and we decided it's finally time to bring this topic to the YouTube channel. To the audience joining, the beautiful people that you see on the screen are dear friends of ours. They're professionals, entrepreneurs, and of course, they have a connection to both the United States and Mexico, much like Kevin and I. So we're going to do some quick introductions so you can know who we're talking to today, and then we'll dive right into some really hot topics. Can I have you start, Matt?
Okay, yeah. My name is Matt Vega. I teach at the University of San Diego in the Theology and Religious Studies department. I focus on race and religion. I'm originally from Chicago. I've been in Chicago for most of my life, but I met Kevin and Jenny in Mexico City, where my wife and I live between 2023 and 2024. So I was there for professional and for personal reasons. I was working on my dissertation. I was working on Spanish and gathering information about Mexican history.
Awesome. And what's your family connection to Mexico?
So my grandma was born in Monterrey, Mexico, and the majority of my dad's family is from Nuevo León.
Okay, nice. And your mom is from the US, right?
My mom is from the US, yeah. Both of my parents grew up in Chicago.
Thank you, Dr. Vega. It's great to have you.
They don't ever call me Dr. Vega again.
Oh, fine.
I was like, no. Okay, that's the first and last time ever.
We love you. We're just so proud of you. So let's introduce Sunam next.
Hi, so my name is Sunam. So I was born in California, but I moved to Tijuana, Mexico when I was just like maybe a few days. And I lived there until I was 6 years old. And then our parents relocated to Pasadena, California, and I lived there from the age of 6 to 14. And then I moved to Nashville, which was so different from living in California. And my profession. So I have a master's in finance and I work as an HR specialist who manages 401k and benefits. And I guess my connection to Mexico is, I've lived there and both my parents are Mexican. My dad's from Tijuana and my mom's from Michoacan. And then my younger brother currently lives in Mexico City. He moved there 4 months ago.
Yes, we have had the pleasure of meeting that said younger brother in Mexico City.
Younger, taller brother.
Taller brother. He's so tall.
Yeah, he's so tall. Most of my brothers are as tall as him, but everybody thinks he's tall. He's older than me because he's really tall.
It happens. Yes. Well, thank you, Sunam. We're super glad to have you. Sad Israel isn't here, but we're going to grab him for our next upcoming video. And last but not at all least, Mr. Tony.
Thank you. My government name is Jose Antonio Uribe.
Hey.
You guys and all my friends call me Tony, Tony U. Was born in San Diego, California, to parents from Tijuana and grandparents, the Mexican connection here, from the states of Jalisco and Nayarit. So I kind of did the opposite of what most Mexicans do in going to the US. I went to Mexico. So in 2016, I moved to basically the beaches of Tijuana or
Uh-huh.
Rosarito Beach, where I had grown up, as mostly a fronterizo, and then the last 3 years have been in Mexico City. In terms of profession, I am a marketer and do digital marketing strategy and consulting work, and work mostly with nonprofits and some big brands to pay those bills.
So cool.
And you have the Pocho
Socialite.
Socialite, right?
That's right. Pocho Socialite is my baby. It's a fun little blog that I came up with. It was actually one of the tasks that a previous employer gave me to get hired. They're like, can you run a blog and produce content? And I'm like, yeah, of course. They're like, prove it. Just make one up about anything about you if you want. And so I thought about my identity, and it was coincidentally with a multicultural advertising agency. So I launched Pocho Socialite, and now this year introduced the Pocho Stuff newsletter, and it's been keeping me busy, and I've been having fun with it. So, yeah,
Great.
thanks for mentioning.
You all are seriously some of the coolest human beings we've met, and there's the reason that we invited each of you to talk about this thing that we share in common, something that really shouldn't be controversial, but somehow kind of is sometimes. And it's something that I feel like bicultural or multicultural individuals have thought about at least deeply, like at least once in their life. So we're going to talk about our ethnic identity and what it means to be ni de aquí, ni de allá, or depending on how you look at it, de aquí y de allá, which is more kind of our vibe and how we like to look at it. So we're going to talk really, really quickly about Hispanic Heritage Month, because we're putting this video up on the channel just right at the end of 2024's Hispanic Heritage Month. So what even is that? All right, I'm going to do a really quick definition from the official government website that says each year the United States of America observes National Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th by celebrating the histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. So the observation started in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week, and it was expanded to cover a 30-day period starting on the 15th of September to the 15th of October. I don't know about you all, but I used to wonder why it started in the middle of one month and ended in the middle of the other. Anyone else? Yeah, anyone know why that is?
Yeah, I think it was because it was originally a week, and I can't remember who the president was, but they ended up extending it to celebrate, more dates, and took up a whole month, if you will, but it's 30 days.
Yeah.
Do you have the official answer?
It was Lyndon B. Johnson who started it as a week, and then President Reagan who expanded it to the month. The reason it starts on the 15th is because that's the anniversary of independence for many Latin American countries like Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. In addition, Mexico and Chile celebrate their independence on the 16th, which really starts on the 15th sometimes, and then the 18th respectively. And then we have Columbus Day, or now known as Indigenous Peoples Day, or Dia de la Raza as well, on October 12th, which falls within this 30-day period. So I learned something new researching that for this video. So just quickly recognizing that is a relevant and culturally significant period in the United States, where I think everyone on this call has lived most of their lives, if not like a great big chunk of their lives. We have these strong connections to these two countries. And so we have a few questions for you all to help understand like how you navigate the world as someone who's connected to two cultures and not just one. Right? So I want to start off by asking everyone, please raise your hand if you have ever had a minor identity crisis while filling out a census form or anything that asks you about your race or ethnicity. Okay, no one is safe from the census form. Okay, so what do you all select for race? And what do you select for ethnicity? Because I will just quickly tell you what mine was when I first saw the options. It said Black, white, Asian, Native American or Hawaiian Pacific Islander, and I could not identify with one of those. I think I asked a teacher when I was a kid, I was like, which one do I choose? And she told me to choose white. And so I did that for like a number of years until I realized that didn't feel right. I don't think that that's right. But I'll pause there and let want someone else share next.
I can go ahead and share. So I was the same as you. I would put as white because I was like, well, I don't think I'm the other ones, but I think now that I'm older, I put white and Native American, just because I feel like that really is our background as being, Mexican American. And then for ethnicity, I mean, it's Hispanic. That's the only option that there is whenever I'm filling a form.
I mean, I put black for race, and then for ethnicity, I put Hispanic. Um, it's like a little bit more straightforward for me, like in that regard, because I'm like, I remember like not knowing how those two related, or not even knowing the difference between race and ethnicity. But at least for me, just being like, okay, my mom's black, my dad's Mexican, and not knowing the difference between the two, just being like, race, I'll just put black, and then ethnicity, I'll just put Hispanic, because yeah, I think that's
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times you're like second guessing
yeah.
yourself or just being like, I'm not sure if this is right. Like, am I going to be graded on this?
I know, like I'm just like, I think this is right.
Right. Okay.
So
Thank
Jenny, you bring up a really good point. Like, who's looking at this? And I guess my answer has always been like, what is the purpose of this question, right?
Mhm.
I grew up going to public education schools, and a lot of times funding is developed or decided on based
Mhm.
on these numbers and statistics. So I guess early on, I understood that, like all good marketers, you got to understand your audience. So I'm like, what are they looking for? What do they want to hear? And how can this benefit not just be me, but the community that I'm a part of? And I think that that's what I used from a very early age, uh,
Mhm.
to like, that's the mindset that I used to check the right box, if you will.
Right. Thank
I don't even remember what I used to put. I just remember somebody told me it was like I'm white, and I was like, but I'm brown. I
Yeah.
know,
Brown's not an option on the
and
census
brown's not
form.
an
Sorry.
option, yeah. But it makes me wonder. So my dad says that when he was in his rancho, he used to do the census. So I kind of wonder what the census looks like in
Mhm.
Mexico.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Well, it wasn't until very recently that Afro-Mexican was added as an option. I think only in the last
Yeah.
couple of years.
Mhm.
Yeah. Tercera raíz, the third root of mestizaje.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So census aside, because the census is its own problem.
Yeah.
When someone asks you about your identity, what do you say? I'm gonna quickly just throw out all the words that we tend to hear, and it's Hispanic,
Yeah.
Latino, Latina, Latinx, Latine, Chicano, Mexican American, Pocho, Pocha, or or none of the above. Is there something else that you would prefer to answer with when someone asks you, "Hi, please tell me about yourself," and then you get to your ethnicity? Which one do you use? What's your preferred term to describe your ethnic identity?
So like when I was growing up, I didn't really I I think it always depended on context for me. Like um I didn't always, like, it wasn't opportunistic. Like I was like, trying to do something that would convenient. I mean, maybe like as a survival like mechanism, like I would like do something that I knew in this context made the most sense. Like sometimes I would say, Mexican. I'd never really said Mexican American, just because like my family just always refer to themselves as Mexican, not like Mexican American or not Chicano. And then other times I would say black. Like now I call myself, like I think of myself as like Blaxican or black, or a black Latino, sometimes I will say, like someone, has asked me, like, eres Mexicano? And I'm like, yeah. But I think like, yeah, it's like I think it's not just like as for like racial or multi-ethnic people. I think like we all are like a multiplicity of persons. And so like one of the reasons I go with like Blaxican is because the term is just not a respecter of borders. And I feel like as Mexicans, like we recognize that borders are meant to kind of determine who's in and who's out. And like people police borders. And so like I think the term Blaxican is just like a way of dismantling the kind of gerrymandering of like the terms Black and Mexican, because like I think of myself as like a Black Mexican or like a Blaxican, right? Like as both. So that's how I've like now that's kind of usually how I will talk about myself racially.
Wow.
I,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
add, I think you bring up a really good point, and that's like we're really familiar with like Black community doing this, but code switching, it really
Yeah.
is like, you know, the context of the conversation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to answer the question, like I think most of my life I was Mexican. Now that I'm in Mexico City, Mexicans don't see me as Mexican, so I am a gringo now. Definitely don't claim it myself, but I understand and I'm honored to call myself a pocho.
Yeah.
But I think Latino and Hispanic are kind of like the terms that I generally gravitate towards, just because Hispanic is such a marketing term and so
Yeah.
digestible for everyone. And Latino is also one of the terms that, you know, just encompasses half of, you know, the continent. So,
Right.
you know, it's
Mhm.
if anybody wants to go deeper than that, I'm happy to have a conversation, but it really does depend on who I'm chatting with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, same for me. So I like to go with Latina or Latine, depending on the context. But when I was in California, like I would call myself Chicana. But once I moved to Nashville, like they didn't really know what that meant in Nashville. Like, what is that? So I would go with Mexican American because they understood that. But
Mhm.
obviously, if you say that in Mexico, like I'm Mexican American, they're going to be like, they don't understand it because they're like, well, America is a continent, not a country. And I think they take offense to that. So I think in Mexico, moving forward, I'll be like, Mexicana estadounidense.
Good one. Yeah, you all brought up like just you hit it on the nail, a nail on the head, and that's the context matters. Who you're talking to matters. So I always have to like think before I answer and figure out like which one is going to be the most digestible for you. And I'm stealing your words, Tony, because you said it so well. The word, at least Hispanic, has become such a like you said, marketing approach, or at least like a political approach to gain votes, to know how to market certain products or do business, and that's been speaking just in the United States.
Right.
But then the definition of that tends to get lost. People kind of forget that the word Hispanic doesn't mean Mexican. It just means somebody from a Spanish-speaking country. That could also include Spain, which is why Hispanic Heritage Month also includes Spain. And you have Latino, Latina, and like you said, it's a geographical thing, and it's just so big. It lumps everyone together, and you go, it's like, well, yeah, I'm a part of that, but also it's so vast and diverse that it's not really fair to just use that. The word Chicano doesn't have like the mainstream use that would help people understand what that really means. So really quickly, for anyone who doesn't know, what does the word Chicano mean and where does it come from? Anyone want to take that?
No.
Okay,
I can speak about it.
I can take it, but I'm talking too much. I feel like
I can take it.
Go for it.
Okay, so I think because I think Chicano connotes more of a political activist connotation, because it was a term that Mexican Americans developed, or not really developed, but took back, because it used to be like a slur word back in the day. So in the 60s, the activists like Cesar Chavez, they took back this word, Chicano. And so I feel like Chicano means more of being like a political activist or an activist that is fighting for the rights of Mexican Americans.
Thank you. That's really well put. And I've also learned that seems to be like very geographical in its mainstream use. Like I think it was more popularly used in California, whereas the state of Texas, I most commonly heard, at least anecdotally, the term Hispanic. And in Illinois, in the Midwest, where we grew up, we mostly grew up with like the term Latino, and then second to that, Hispanic.
Yeah. Mexican or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever they're
Mexican.
from. I've always been Mexican. I've always like thought of Mexican. I remember when I was little, my mom would tell me that I was from San Luis, from Vera Cruz, and Chicago, and I'm like, damn, my blood's divided in three. How does it work, right? And I feel like throughout our journey traveling throughout Mexico, even then, like I've always had that crisis of like when they ask me where you from, I'm like, damn, where am I from? I'm Mexican, I'm American. But I finally figured it out. And my thing is, I say I'm Mexican from Chicago. I'm Mexican from Chicago, and that's it. Like whether they like it or not, I don't care because that's it. I'm done. At 37 years of age, I decided that I'm a Mexican from Chicago and I'm gonna stay like that.
Yeah, and it can take that long to really figure it out because we face so many instances where other people are telling us what we are or what we aren't, like as if they have a say in the matter. Right. First of all, like other people trying to tell us who we are.
I have a very similar new identity. Now I say that I'm a Mexicano nacido en el extranjero, and they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
yeah, that's a thing."
And that's literally what my says, right? It says like born abroad. It's my truth.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that because I felt the same way when I first got my Mexican citizenship. And when you get citizenship via heritage, they issue you a birth certificate issued by the Mexican government. And just like you said, it says born abroad. And I go, yes, I am a Mexican who just happened to be born abroad. And according to the Constitution, I am Mexican by blood and by citizenship. And so for anyone who's watching this and has Mexican heritage, whether it's your parents or your grandparents or even beyond that, and you want to get Mexican citizenship, the Constitution says you can do that. And so we will be linking those how-to videos in the description below. I want to get back to something that Tony mentioned earlier, and I love that you took ownership of the word pocho, something I don't think I've been brave enough to do yet, because when someone calls me a pocha, and usually it's not in a very nice way, I still feel some type of way. I don't like it. So I think it's really cool. Tell me about how you chose to adopt that.
Yeah, so I think, we mentioned the term Chicano, and I think I had a small Chicano phase during, school, being in activism and wanting to see change. But that term was too scary for me, for other people. So it kind of scares and it's off-putting to people who understand like the connotation, the politics behind it. And pocho was a term that was seen as an insult. It was kind of like the original no sabe kid, right? Like y'all hear the term maiden slur, no sabe, or no sabo, excuse me.
The no sabo kid.
Yeah, I'm saying it wrong. And to me,
ya sabes, that's why.
Yes. But yeah, so I mean, I was like, this is not a bad thing. Like you're literally claiming to be from both countries, knowing two cultures, and to me, it's beautiful, right? So I think owning a term that was originally meant to be a bad thing was something that was easy for me to do and take back that power. And again, for that assignment that I mentioned earlier, like combining it with a word like socialite, you think socialite is someone like Paris Hilton or someone with lots of money and success and likes to party and, all the beautiful things. Like the juxtapose between those two words was to me another one of those beautiful artistic balances that I wanted to put together.
Yeah, you did so good in putting those two words together. Definitely caught my attention.
Thanks.
Very cool. Okay, so I want to also bring up another term that we often like to use on our YouTube channel, but also seems to ruffle a lot of feathers. We tend to refer to ourselves as Mexican American. We do the hyphenating thing, which is very common in the US, but to people outside of the US, I think a lot of other cultures and nationalities find that strange. So while for us, like we've gotten accustomed to hyphenating our two nationalities, something that one of you all mentioned earlier was that using the term American, while normal in the US, is not very well accepted in Mexico, especially because in the US, I think it comes from the fact that we're taught that there are 7 continents and other countries are taught that there are 5. I'm not going to say who's right or wrong. I'm just going to say we were taught different things. And to us, there's North America and there's South America. And so there's a long history from when the British colonized this land that is now the US, they started calling people in that land Americans, and it just stuck. So whatever ended up happening with the nomenclature of the continent and some people recognizing it as all America, I agree. Everyone on the American continent, from the very north of Canada to the southern tip of Argentina, all can be called Americans. But that doesn't change the fact that in the US, we are very accustomed to using that term. So I bring that up because we get a lot of pushback from people online and in different places for using the term Mexican American. But to us, at least to me, it more fully encompasses who I am, because I'm Mexican by heritage, blood, culture, in the way that I eat my tortillas with my hands, and with the way that I like to sing las mañanitas, whatever. I'm also just as much American in the education system that I grew up in my values, in my the way that I view capitalism. Like, I'm so heavily influenced by both cultures. I cannot identify with just one.
Right.
And so my preferred term is the nationalities hyphenated, because that for me is what does it. What about you?
The same.
Yeah.
The same. You know, I love my pizza, American pizza. Ooh, that's in the hidden Italian, right? In the hidden Italian heart.
Chicago specifically.
Yeah, Chicago specifically.
But it always, like, it depends who you ask too. Like, somebody would always have you know, their opinion on the whole Mexican American perspective, the whole you could even go to Mexico and ask a Mexican what a pocho means, and everybody's gonna give you a definition. So we're just all kind of just jumbled up. I'm Mexican American. Now I'm a little bit more careful, and I say I'm Mexican US American. Just have to write those extra 2 letters.
That's fine. We can do that, but we're not gonna change like hundreds of years of history of the way a word has been used. Like, but at the same time, if we can bring in words like Latinx, Latine, like maybe it is time to start saying Mexican US American. I'm like you, Sunam, too, in Spanish. I also say Mexico Estadounidense. But in English, that doesn't quite exist in the same way unless you say the Mexican US American. So yeah, maybe that's be. I don't know if anyone watching this has some thoughts about these terms, which one you prefer. Should we just pick one as a community and be like, this is what we are, or is it too complicated? Are we too diverse for that? I don't know. I think maybe. I think you can make the argument either or.
It's way too complicated.
Yeah. Okay.
If you enjoy our content and want to show your appreciation, you can buy us a coffee or join us on Patreon for more exclusive content. To all of our Patreon members, thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts. We truly appreciate your continued support.
So each of you have spent some time living in Mexico, and I think that's really cool. I would love to bring you all back for a future topic to talk about those experiences. But I want to ask you now, does the phrase ni de aquí ni de allá resonate with you? Why or why not?
Yeah, so for me, it does resonate so much. And if you really think about it, we're kind of like the first generation that kind of did not grow up in Mexico full time. I mean, I was there until I was 6, but all our generations prior were in Mexico like full time. So in our DNA, we're kind of programmed. So when we're in Mexico, like, we have so many good memories because it's probably because, you know, our ancestors were from there. But also, like, we are also, like, if we grew up in the US, like, we also feel like we're from the US because we do have, you know, our history, our family history can come from Mexico, but our personal history is from both. And it's kind of like a duality, you know, that as Mexican Americans, we have to grapple with, like, we're from both countries, but at the same time, we're not. But it is a privilege to have to grapple with this identity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think it always brings us back to that famous scene in Selena where, you know, Dad James Olmos is talking. James Edward Olmos, is that it?
James Edward Olmos, yeah.
Almost forgot his name there. is telling her that it's not just that you're from both. It's like you have to know both. So we do get to be a part of two cultures and two identities. Like I think that one of the major things we've been covering here is just identity, the complexity of identity. And I think each individual, as you grow into who you really are, you get to decide what you want to own, what you want to take with you. Maybe they're your cultural habits or your parents' habits or your grandparents' habits. Or maybe they're your best friend from elementary school, just picking up the things that feel right to you, whether that's playing baseball or soccer or maybe both, football, excuse me. Doing both, just really stepping into who you are and owning that identity proudly.
Yes.
I think for me, like ni de aquí ni de allá, like works like I resonate with it in like a different way. Like, I was always made to believe that again, like Mexicanidad and Blackness were like entirely irreconcilable. So like if I was mixed with Black, like I couldn't possibly be Mexican because like to be Mexican is to be something other than Black. And like I received this like that message from, like everywhere. Like I remember even from when I was writing my dissertation, I like included like a clip from Sofia Niño de Rivera. She has this like stand-up comedy special on Netflix called Natural Selection. And I think she's talking about her visit to like South Africa. And, it was like really surprising for her to, because like in Mexico, she said like, no, tenemos todo tipo de piel, tenemos blanco, tenemos gris, tenemos sepia. And she was like, pero no tenemos negro. And I was like, oh, really? So you get that like message like everywhere, right? Like, like to be Mexican is not to be Black. So for me, like I think I've kind of always heard that these two things were like entirely separate. And so like that, I think that kind of that adage is an adage. The adage is like very much like yeah, I think like speaks to people who kind of like again are border crossers like in their identity and also like geographically.
Yeah. Mexico, like the Afro descendants are erased really from history and
Yeah.
culture and really undervalued and for all their contributions into Mexican culture. They're so important to like the reason we have amazing food in Veracruz and Guerrero and these amazing festivities, and people just kind of either ignore, choose to forget. It's not taught in the schools. But it's up to us, right, to start to make these changes. So I can only imagine like this extra layer of work that you had to do, like even more than the rest of us. And that's
And in the recent years, there's been a little bit of a shift with the recent president, and a little bit more of an awareness, and because I don't want to. I'm gonna say it because it feels convenient sometimes to the people right now. It's like they're gonna start celebrating the Afro community a little bit more, which is really good because it's gonna come out because in Veracruz, it's in record that it's the first. There's a town called Yanga that is the first town that's free
in the Americas, right?
Yeah, the free town of the America. No one ever knew that before, like 2-3 years ago, and of course now it's like, oh yeah, we're proud of it, and
now it's being politicized as a movement to try to get people. And that's what ends up happening with these
Vera Cruz is like very much like part of that like cultural kind of like they're preserving like that the Afro Mexican identity through like the naming of places. They have like a Coyolillo, I think is the name of the like has the festival. Like
there's even a book now that they're like gifting away to people to learn more about the Afro communities and specifically in Veracruz, which is nice. And it's nice because it tells people like, certain foods are not just Mexican. They didn't just like like
they didn't just magically
agua de Jamaica, agua de horchata, tamales de hojas de plátano,
like have African influence.
Yeah.
And like I recognize too that like I think one of the reasons that I prefer like the term Blaxican over Afro-Mexican is because I want to like respect the indigenous African populations within Mexico that are that have been settled in places like, or maybe not necessarily indigenous, but have been settled in Mexico for since Spanish colonization, right? When the Spanish brought them, or they came from other parts. And so like, but I think that like I love where y'all are bringing up is just like, yeah, but within Mexico itself, like those things are just not irreconcilable. Mexico has this rich history with
Yeah.
the African continent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you,
And
guys.
that's not exclusive to Mexico. In the US, we've also struggled with, just the Black community has had struggle throughout. And I think that we're in a good place in time where we've progressed. It's nice to see the pride that we're all able to carry who we are now. And
Yeah.
privileged to be able to express that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Y'all are just such intelligent, smart, and amazing people, with great experiences and great things to share. I'll let to our viewers, if you want to hear more from these people, please drop a comment and let us know so that we can bring them back to talk more about their experiences living in Mexico, because you all have heard a lot from us about our experiences living in Mexico, but we need to talk more to Tony, Sunam, Matt, and as well as Israel, who was unable to join us today. We'll be bringing him back. So if you enjoyed this conversation, let us know in the comments. Thank you guys again so much. Before we go, I also want to invite our viewers to check out Pocho Socialite. Tony, can you tell us where to check out your blog and how to subscribe?
Yeah, probably the easiest thing is from Instagram. Everything's linked there. Tony Yu is my username. The Pocho stuff email comes out every Friday. You can subscribe there. The blog is also there, which has a lot of fun information for people who are wanting to travel or get to know Mexico.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll also be linking it down in the description below. And Sunam has an amazing podcast with her brother. Can you tell us about Money Noticias really quickly?
Yeah, so we actually interviewed Jenny and Kevin on it. So if you want to learn about their stories relating to money, how they were able to move to Mexico, then make sure to listen. But basically, Money Noticias is where we spill all the tea about money as it relates to being anti-racist and anti-capitalist and living our best lives. And you can find that podcasts in any of your favorite podcasting platforms, such as like Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Awesome. Thank you, Sunam. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. If you made it to the end of this video, drop a Mexico and a USA emoji in honor of our identity crises as a collective. Thank you so much. Se cuidan, se bañan y nos vemos en la próxima. Ciao.
Ciao.